I'm a little confused.
Yeah.
It seems, although that's, a generous and sensitive question you've asked, it seems to me that you've approached and got the permission of the legitimate arbiters on this question, and so why do you feel, if
The
they've
question
approved...
transcends, I think, Martha's particular permission, because not everybody would have responded that way, first of all.
Well then, but,
In this book.
yes, but...
And then Joel's story, I don't know, he might wants to play coy and he won't tell you.
But you still feel guilty even though I gave you the permission, and I think that's
And you know what
what's
made
so
me feel,
strange to me.
what made
Yeah,
me
me
feel
too.
guilty is the fact that in that book, you will read words that Martha Nussbaum didn't want to read because she wouldn't speak like that.
But she
And
didn't
you
want to
will-
read them, but she's already said
Well,
that
I
she
okayed
gave you
them in the
artistic
books,
permission.
yeah.
Right,
I-
but to
I-
me,
do
this
it
is
that
an
way.
issue, that you have okayed something that, number one, a discussion about Kierkegaard when you're not particularly interested in Kant, a discussion about agape when you're not particularly interested. I mean, I used that kind of stuff because it was, not because it was Martha's issues, but because it was very relevant to Alan Krieger.
Yes, yes.
He wants an excuse
To
to
just
go
suspend the
ahead
ethical.
and kill black people, So he's trying to get her to give him language to do that.
Right.
And she won't do that.
I
But-
infer that she's given you permission to do that.
Yeah, I
artistic-
did, and as I say, there were certainly things that if I had really decided to go into it in great detail, I might have changed more things, but I felt I should change only the things that I must change and give him the maximum freedom, because it's his novel, and as you say, the Kierkegaard does play a role. I could see that in this character's mind, and of course there's nothing, I have no objection to Kierkegaard, it's just not something that I work on, so I thought that was fine, and the way of talking about law and economics, I guess it may be a Freudian slip that I passed that over, because when I saw it in the script, I did not remember having seen it before, and I'm sure I did see it at least 3 times, so I think probably I wanted to say that, but I didn't want to notice that I had allowed you to say it.
Well, maybe it's just Jewish guilt, but the fact is that I have, by testimony, misrepresented Martha Nussbaum in my printed version of Martha Nussbaum in Golem Song. And that's enough to make me really question that act. Even though she has been completely generous and good-natured and good-humored and philosophical, as it were, about it. So, maybe it's just me.
No, but why not? No
Problems
one
with my
reading
mother.
that would think ill of me as a result. It wouldn't damage me. If they want to know the detail of my philosophical ideas, they're going to have to go read something else. But of course that's going to be the case because it's a novel. So I just don't see any reason why you should feel any kind of compunction.
So maybe, okay, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think what you're talking about, it's not a sense of guilt. I think it's a sense of heightened responsibility to Martha, even though she gave you her permission. It really doesn't speak to your sense of responsibility in describing the character. It's like wanting to do justice to the character and also wanting to be responsible to Martha because she did give you permission.
That's
what I'm
certainly a
hearing.
dimension of what I'm feeling as guilt. I had a similar thing. I have a novel called Insect Dreams, which is about Gregor Zamsek, the Kafka's guy who turned into a cockroach. And he winds up as the risk management consultant to the Manhattan Project. This is a 6-foot talking cockroach. And he's hired by FDR to go out to be the risk management consultant to the Manhattan Project. And during this time, he gets sick and he has a fever dream, and he goes to the hospital and he's taken care of by 2 docs who are in fact the doctors at the Los Alamos Hospital. Wooden shacks in the mud up on the mountain. And when the book went in, it went in at 900 pages. It came out at 500 pages. A lot of stuff was cut. And one of the things that was cut was a big kind of analysis of Gregor's life by his friend. The whole friend left. So I had to find somebody to put the words in the mouth of. So I took the doctor, who, the chapter is all about the wasteland, and I figured this guy, this character I've created, is smart enough to be able to say the kind of things that he says. Turns out that this guy is still alive, lives in Chicago. As a matter of fact. One of the few original Los Alamos personnel. So I wrote him, essentially to say, hi, thanks, I used you in a book. You want to see it? I'll send you a copy. Right. He says, okay, so send me a copy. And I get a letter back from him, and he says, this is great, I love it. It's such an accurate description of Los Alamos. I'm going to send it to all my friends that I know that were at Los Alamos, and da-da-da-da-da. And sure, put the words in my mouth. 2 weeks later, I get a letter. He says, I'm sorry, but my daughter has read the book, and she feels that the ideas that you are expressing in my mouth are so different from what I would say that it doesn't make any sense for you to have me say them. And he took back the permission to do this. So I put it in somebody. I don't even remember whose mouth I put it in. I mean, it was an arbitrary. I wanted to use this stuff, so I put it in somebody's mouth who was either fictional or was dead, right? And didn't have a daughter. And it was that piled on this that made me feel that at least for living people, you have to, whether they like it or not, he loved it. You have to have the kind of responsibility that their daughters would recognize as important, if not they themselves.
But see, here I think what is important is that I appear as a thinker, and then I leave, and I'm not really part of the plot except in that way. What's disturbing, I'm thinking about the movie Capote. Now, of course, I don't even know whether that's an accurate account of those events, and that's yet another dimension. Maybe the screenwriter was using Capote to make some point that he wanted to make. But Capote obviously used that murder in cold blood because he wanted a certain kind of story, and up to a point, he was very sympathetic, and the guy was fully open to him, and Capote was really, they were in harmony. But obviously, he wanted him to die because the novel would be much more successful and it would have a much better denouement if the guy died. So he went home and lay in bed and did not intervene when he might have intervened to get a stay of execution. Now, see, that to me is really using another person's life for your own story. But there's nothing like that in your work, not at all.
Yeah.
No, it seems to be the
Can you speak a little louder, because we're going to try and capture it on the camera?
the question seems to be one of permission. How is this different than from, say Christopher Isherwood writing as the character Christopher Isherwood in the Berlin Stories, a piece of fiction, as the author? I mean, it's just a question of permission, it seems, whether a living person will allow you to write and put words in their mouth.
That feels to me, I have to say, like an overly simplified, legalistic notion of the dynamic of what's going on. The fact is, I have to just say, that as irrational as it may seem, and in spite of the fact that Martha has encouraged me to think otherwise for very good and well-articulated reasons, that I now wonder much more than I did before about my use of living characters putting things in their mouth. And the fact is that I've now written 7 novels, and since this, I guess, Insect Dreams, I have not used any people, and I don't know if it's just because I'm feeling guilty or because I'm just feeling now creative enough that I don't need to, I can just make up characters, and it's, so. Yeah.
I think there is a difference. I mean, I think if you use yourself as a fictional character, you probably use your own language and the rhythm of your own words. And here, the rhythm of the words is his. It isn't mine. And that's difficult for me to perform it as an actress, actually. I don't, I can't point to specific places, but I just felt that the cadences, the way the thought moved, it just wasn't exactly me. So I think it is different, because if I use myself as a fictional character, as I have done actually, I wrote a philosophical dialogue in which I was a character and my mother and father were characters, and it was performed on stage. Actually what comes out of my mouth is something that I might have written, and in most cases I already had written those things under my own name.
You had a question?